Express y equals to minus 2x square plus 7x plus 6 by completing the square method. So we're going to look at how to complete the square. That means, of course, when you actually complete the square, you should be able to see a perfect square, and one of these four options should be your answer. Now, first step you're going to do is to just copy down the expression, and what we're going to do is to make x square have a coefficient of 1. So of course right now it is having a coefficient of minus 2, so we're going to take that outside a bracket. So we are going to factorize out the coefficient of x squared, so which is of course in this case is a minus 2. So let's pull out the minus 2 and let's put an open bracket. Now from the minus 2x square I pulled out the minus 2, but of course if I were to put an open bracket here, if I expand this minus 2 with the 7x, it's actually going to give you minus 14x, but that's not the case. We must bring it back to 7x by taking out a minus 2 out of the entire expression. So since we have a positive 7 here and we pulled out a negative 2, so what we can do now is we can push the 7 up and we can put a 2 below, right? And this is of course going to become a 7 over 2. Of course if you expand it, so the 2 and the 2 would get cancelled and you would get back the 7x, right? So that will be a 7x. But however, if you notice the sign here is a positive sign, so it's a positive 7x. So of course the positive sign you have got to change it to negative sign because you pulled out a negative 2. So now if you actually expand it back, negative 2 times negative 7 over 2x, negative and negative would become positive 7x, right? So now out of the positive 6, if you take out a negative 2, so this positive of course is going to become a negative sign, and of course we're going to write a 2 below, and this would of course become negative 6 over 2. So we're going to change it to a negative, and then we're going to put a 6 over 2. Of course you could have written a negative 3 as well, so that doesn't make a difference. But let me just, for simplicity's sake, I just wanted to show you that, you know, when you pull out a minus 2, so every one of them, you know, you put a minus 2 below, right? So this is the first step. That's going to be the first step. Factorize out the coefficient of x square so that the x square has a coefficient of 1. This is a very, very important and very crucial step. So what we're going to do next is the 6 over 2, I changed it to a minus 3, which you could have done it straight away. Then your second step is we're going to express the term in x, in this case minus 7 over 2. Okay, this is the minus 7 over 2x is the term in x in the form of 2 times x times a. We want to use a special product, okay, 2 times x times a, where a is actually half of the coefficient of x. Right now the coefficient of x is 7 over 2, so if we actually take half of 7 over 2, it's going to become 7 over 4. So we're going to change that 7 over 2 now, okay? So half of the coefficient of x, 7 over 2's half of it is going to become, of course, 7 over 4. But we need to put a 2 in front. So what we're going to do is, okay, let's push the 3 aside. Okay, so we're going to change it to this form. So 7 over 2, okay, and of course if I introduce a 2 here, so it becomes 2x, but the a is still not changed. So this has got to become 7 over 4. So a is half of the coefficient, right? So it's going to become 7 over 4. Now, of course, after you do this step, you always open up the bracket and check back, you know, 2 and the 4. If you cancel, it's going to become 7 over 2x again, right? So this is basically your second step, okay? So at any stage, of course, when you are starting to practice, it's a good practice to, you know, after you express this, you want to check back whether this is right or wrong. So you throw in the minus 2 times the minus 2, that's going to become plus 4, and then the 4, you cancel the 4, you're going to get plus 7x, and you can always check back, okay? So this should be exactly the same as this if you expand it back again. So what would be the next step that we need to do? The next step would be to add as well as subtract the square of the a we wrote down in the previous step inside the bracket. What do I mean by that? This is the value of a we wrote down, 7 over 4, right? So we're going to add, okay, add the square of a. So we write 7 over 4 and then we put a square sign outside. Okay, so 7 over 4 squared. So we have done add as well as subtract. So we're going to subtract away 7 over 4 square as well. So this is the third important step that you need to perform. Now of course at this stage you might be wondering, why do I want to add a square of a number and then subtract? The reason why I add this is because I want to make this into a special product. Now you can see a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, you know, that form that we have. But of course we cannot anyhow add any number. So since we have added the 7 over 4 square in order to get a perfect square, I am subtracting away the number. Okay, so of course if I add something, I got to subtract away, which is equivalent to not adding it at all. So if you don't understand, okay, listen to this again. So the reason why I am adding a 7 over 4 square is so that this becomes a perfect square, and because I have added it in order to make it into a perfect square, so I am subtracting away a square of the term. Okay, so what we're going to do, the fourth step, convert the first three terms inside the bracket. Okay, so this x square minus 2x times 7 over 4 and 7 over 4 square, these are the first three terms into a perfect square, right? So these three terms we are going to turn it into a perfect square. Of course, to turn it into a perfect square, I'm just going to put a bracket and put a square first. So this is of the form a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So if you look at perfect square, if you recall, so your a is a x and your b is simply 7 over 4. So we're going to write x, and since this is a minus sign, so we put a minus, and 7 over 4 is the b, so 7 over 4 squared. So this is your step number 4. So we have converted this into a perfect square right now. And what is left? We have got these two numbers, so we need to simplify them. So I'm just copying it down, right? So the next step is simplify the numbers right after the perfect square. So we're going to throw in the square for the 7 and we can throw in the square for the 4. So that's of course going to become 49 over 16. So 7 squared is of course 7 times 7, that's a 49. 4 square is 4 times a 4, that would become 16. So this number is 49 over 16. And we have got a 3 here. Of course 3 we could change it into a we can, is actually 3 means 3 over 1. So if I want to change it to a something over 16, what number would that be? Of course I can change it to a 48 over 16. This is also 3. Why would I want to do this? Because I want to be able to add up these two fractions together, right? When we want to add two fractions together, we've got to make sure that the denominator is the same. So I've got minus 49 over 16 minus another 48 over 16. And altogether this is going to become minus 97 over 16. So that's what we do in the next step, step number 5. We're going to simplify these numbers that we wrote here after we have performed the perfect square. So we got a 97 minus 97 over 16. Now the last step is to throw in the minus 2. There are two terms inside the bracket, the blue color bracket. So which is minus 2 times whatever that we have in a red bracket, and then minus 2 times the minus 97 over 16. So if I were to expand the bracket, so first let me just take the number. Minus times a minus is of course plus. 2 times 97 over 16, the 2 can cancel with the 16, and the denominator is now half of, if I cancel by 2, so it's going to become a 8. That's why this is a positive 97 over 8. Negative times negative is positive, so that's a positive 97, and the 2 and the 16 gets cancelled to give you 8. So we get a 97 over 8. Then the next step, we're going to just throw in the minus 2 for the red color bracket. So minus 2 times x minus 7 over 4 squared. So therefore this is what that expression minus 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 becomes after you have performed the completing the square. Therefore option D is the right answer.